Hey, we're live. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. We are doing our expo again. This is, we're well into a year now of doing this expo. Welcome, everybody who is following us and keeping in touch. Today, we are going to continue our conversation on building proposals, looking at proposals, comparing proposals, and how that works out. So we have our normal crew with us today. We have Daniel. You want to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you. My name is Daniel Lima. I'm the owner of Endure Painting, and we basically do interior, exterior painting. We specialize in HOAs and multifamily projects. So we're here to help with any project that you got in mind. Thank you.
Daisy.
Hi, everyone. I'm Daisy Ortiz. I'm the marketing manager with IQV Construction and Roofing. We are your Bay Area's construction and roofing specialists, and we service the whole Bay Area.
Annetta, you want to introduce yourself and your helpers today?
Hi, I'm Annetta with Bandcow. This is Mango, my bird. I'm a community association manager for Bandcow. We manage HOAs and rental buildings in San Francisco.
Thank you. Mark?
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Mark Owens with Reliant Construction Management. I manage a team of construction managers that work throughout the entire Bay Area to full construction management services for properties, HOAs, apartment buildings, single-family homeowners. So our lion's share of our clients are HOAs, and we do everything from developing scopes to managing large projects, reconstruction projects, capital improvement projects, upgrades to building systems, including HVAC, and catastrophic events such as water losses, as well as civic related support too as well, permit expediting, and risk management.
Thank you. We also have Ted Dayton joining us today with IQV Construction. You want to introduce yourself?
Greetings.
Okay, go.
I'll use mine. Okay. I'm going to use your background. Okay, great. Yeah, thanks. I'm a sales guy here at IQV. Been here 3 weeks, but have quite a bit of experience in both in the HOA and apartment industries here in the Bay Area. I was a journeyman framer and then got into roofing and waterproofing, so I have a pretty broad background, but I've been mostly estimating and managing and selling exterior renovation for the last 10 years now. So.
Well, welcome today, and welcome to IQV also. And then, of course, I'm Brian Garcia with Restoration Management Company. Restoration Management Company is a full-service restoration disaster recovery company. Fires, floods, asbestos, lead, biohazards. We help you on all of those projects, make sure you get your tenants back into their homes quickly and safely and painlessly as possible. So again, today, welcome again. We are again talking about the bidding process, looking at proposals, comparing proposals, and making sure that things are apples to apples and you're getting a good, solid proposal. So our team today is going to follow up with what we talked about 2 weeks ago. On the 2 weeks ago, we talked specifically around the RFPs. Today, we're going to talk a little bit, or going to dig in a little bit more into the actual proposals themselves and how you're comparing them, looking at the bottom line, and asking questions and answering questions towards those proposals. One of the things I want to bring up is, there's a difference between RFP proposals and general proposals. RFP proposals, there's very strict guidelines usually on what needs to be addressed, how the proposals to be addressed and presented, versus a general proposal, which is really left to the expertise of the vendors who are building those proposals. So there's often differences in proposals. So we want to talk about how you look at those differences and compare them and making sure that you're getting a quality proposal. So why don't we start off with Daniel? When you're, well, actually, let's back up. I'm back up on that. Annetta, let's start with you. You're the one who's really looking at these proposals. So when you get these proposals, you have a handful of proposals. It's generally what, 3 proposals is kind of the standard, right?
Yeah.
So you get 3 proposals. What are you looking at when you get these?
First thing I look at is the price. If it's within our budget, right? Mm-hmm. That's the first thing I look at, and also looking at the scope of work, making sure it's like they're all the same. Like there's no no differences or anything. And what I do is like I'll create like a spreadsheet and kind of like do a checklist. Like, hey, does it like will it? I guess does it follow like the scope of work, or really address what we like our issues or what we need, and if there's any discrepancies, like I'll reach out to the vendors and get clarification.
When you if we're talking for an RFP, when you put out an RFP, do you generally give an opportunity for the vendors to ask questions and then to respond to them?
When I send out an RFP, I try to be as detailed as possible about what is needed, like our budget and everything, the scope of work, when it's needed by, and I just say, if you have any questions, just let me know. Okay. That's what I typically do.
Sure. Now, for the rest of us as vendors, when you see these RFPs, how are you approaching the RFP process? Now we'll go with Daniel. Daniel, how do you approach that RFP process?
Sorry, trying to find the unmute button. Well, I mean, I think I mentioned a little bit about how I do it myself. Once I get the RFP, in the technical part or the practical part, I actually use like different highlighters and just kind of write things down that get my attention, whether it's something that it's different from the normal, like in my case, painting, right? If it's something a little bit different than what the normal painting is, then I'll highlight it. Then I have like another color where I use for questions that I may have. And so then I get back to the manager and ask those questions so that before I actually head out and start looking at the property, rather just have all those questions so I can bid properly beforehand. Sometimes, when I was first starting, not having a good process would make things complicated, and you get out there to the property, and then you realize the questions that you have, and then you go back and ask the questions, and then you have to go back to the property again. And then you realize more questions, and by that time you're going 3 or 4 times to that same property. So it's just better to really take the time to read through the RFP well and write down all your questions that you have. And yeah, like you mentioned, ask things like budgets. We as professionals should know if we're looking at a whole exterior building and their budget is, a quarter of what should be, then you already know it's like there is something wrong there, right? And so it's good to ask questions, good to have an understanding of the scope of work, and so that's pretty much my process.
Okay, Chad, you haven't. You're joining us for the first time today, so I want to give you an opportunity to really chime in on this. So you get an RFP, and similar to what Daniel, I'm guessing, but how do you go through that process of reviewing that RFP and then making sure your questions are being answered?
You need to read through. So I'm using her mic here. I need to read through to first of all understand who's writing this and do they know enough about their project to know what a good scope of work is. Sometimes you just work order RFP that says, hey, I need a roof inspection, and you have to clarify sometimes. But when it's a larger project and there's a construction manager involved, or maybe you're reading the scope and you can tell some other contractor wrote it and they're just getting some more proposals. It's nice to know who's writing it, and by reading it, you can learn pretty quickly if they know their project very well or not. And that's going to usually generate a few more questions. Just like Daniel said, I start writing on the back of the RFP. I start writing RFI, questions. Do they want to do the carports? Do they want to do the metal caps do they want to do new chimney caps, or tying into, like on a roofing thing, how are we tying into what's there, the existing siding, or various things. And most of my questions are answered by the time I finish the RFP. But some scopes are so generic, or even boilerplate, copy and pasted from something else. So the more you read, the more you know if the person writing the scope knows what they're talking about, or if you need to help them know what they're talking about, or at least clarify a little bit. Mark's scopes of work are usually pretty good. We know what we're bidding, and we know knows what he's talking about. But there's always questions, even with a good construction manager. They miss things. They don't know everything, and you should have a few of our RFIs, especially if there's a great chance to do a little clarification right then and there. It also lets you know that your other bidders are. I love that, to see if they're paying attention. There's a couple layers of roofing over there, and make sure we're all on the same page. Something I like to bid against people that know what they're doing and aren't bidding too cheap. I like good competition, so it's good to have everybody else who's bidding it understand it. You don't always know who else is bidding it, but some of your better clients will tell you some information. I'm not trying to go around and do that it helps,
It always, I actually always laugh when I get into the bidding process and RFP process, and the person who's put out that RFP is unwilling to share who else you're bidding against. It just seems silly to me. Why? I'm going to find out at some point in time anyway. We all talk to each other. Everybody knows what everybody's doing. And I think that should be a very part of the open conversation. Who else am I bidding against? And I think there's very specific reasons. You know who your competition is. You know what everybody else does. You know how everybody else does their bidding process. And I think it's part of that checks and balances and making sure that there is clear lines of communication.
One more thing on that too, just like you said, you can tell if they're going to use best practices or not. Mm-hmm. And if you need to help steer the conversation towards best practices, or if you're just going to have to give the best bid you possibly can and the cheapest products, which there's a line I won't go below for sure, but you have to meet the customer's budget. But you're also, it helps you know, hey, am I bidding against Avalon Reconstruction Services, which is going to be nice, or am I bidding against some other customer? Are you what's the level of expectation here? Am I trying to absolutely this 40-year system, which, top 3% of contractors are going to give you, or am I more generic and going to give you a nice 20-year system, or am I bidding against really low ballers?
Yeah. And that is definitely part of the conversation with the property management is, when you're looking at these proposals, is the bids or the choices is the decision going to be made on price? Is the decision going to be made on the quality, on the value back? How is this job going to be decided on? And there are definitely some people who will say it's price. It's all price. Everything's going to be price. It doesn't matter about anything else. Price. And that's where it comes down to us as vendors saying, okay, well, is that something we want to even approach then? Because we aren't going to build our proposals on price. We're going to build our proposals on the quality and the value and the service. And so I think that is a really good point to bring up to the property managers or to anybody who's asking for these bids is, how are you making the decision? Is it price? And if it's price, why is it only price? What are you actually looking for? Just to get it turned around and done, or what's happening here? What's everybody else's opinion on that?
It's like it's like a balance of both. I mean, a reasonable price and also making sure I guess they do everything to make all the necessary repairs, or like if the repairs are, I guess I don't know how to describe it, but I guess yeah. So it's like a detailed scope of work is nice, and also like the price is within our budget.
So for us as vendors, we put in these proposals, and we get the response back of, well, this other vendor came in at 30% below. Why? Why is there 30% below? So let's talk about actually looking at these proposals. So Annetta, we're going to lean on you a lot on this one. When you see this variance in proposals where you have, say it's 3 proposals, right, across the board. You have one that's really high, one that's smack in the middle, and one that's incredibly low. Mm-hmm. What's going through your mind when you see that?
I mean, I'll ask for like an itemization, I guess, like so I can understand like what exactly, why they're billing, or that way, or why the price is, how they came up with that price. So I'll ask for like a kind of more details on the materials being used and also the labor.
Sorry, I can't laugh here. Sorry.
That's definitely something that I've when I've gotten the the feedback from managers that they either tell me, hey, you're actually like you said, 20-30% higher. That's the typical thing that happens to us, that we're higher. I always kind of go back to the fact that the way that we build things and the way what we sell, it's a service of hours. It's basically time. It's we all do different trades, but at the end of the day, it's time that we're putting in there. And so when you see a bid that is quite significantly lower, there is a discrepancy in time that someone is not gonna put the same amount of time to work on that property, right? To do the right prep, or to do the right management for it, or it could be different things. So that's one of the things that I make sure that I can explain that to our clients. It's just how much time maybe I'm putting on that job, and sometimes you can tell right away. If you ask a person, how long you think this is going to take, and it would say, with 10 guys, it's going to take 2 months, and then the other company says 10 guys, we're going to take a month. Then it's half of that time, someone is going to blow through it, and so those are things that I kind of ask those questions just to raise that question to the manager, and so they can kind of know where that discrepancy is.
Yeah. Mark, I want you to chime in on this also. I mean, you work with everybody across the board, the managers, with us as vendors. You are writing these RFPs and getting them out, and then you're getting these bids back. How do you approach it when you see something like that happen?
Sure. Well, before I answer that, I want to go back to one thing that Annetta brought up, and everybody's talking about sort of regarding a project, and you're evaluating and you're coming in with the numbers, and whether it's an RP or at a scope, and then you're looking at factoring in costs, and it goes to Annetta and her clients and the HOAs. Whether it's interesting. The budget may be known ahead of time, which can help, obviously, but there are some times where, whether it's the reserve study it's underfunded or under budgeted for whatever reasons. Reserve studies are not perfect; they're a tool, or there's maybe a misconception, like maybe they allotted, say there's a whole exterior painting project, and they allotted based on maybe the last time they did it was 12 years ago, then it's going to be $40,000. But because 12 years have passed, pricing has changed, inflation, and they're really basing it, just talking a little bit, it's well over. It sometimes requires, whether myself, if I'm the construction manager, or working with the property manager to help them understand, whether beforehand is great, but as in real time, if this is unfolding with the proposals, that I'm sorry that you thought it was going to be lower, but reality is that you're not going to be able to shop this around to get this number, or if you do and you get this number, you're going to definitely get inferior work. So I just want to just sort of touch on it. It's not really, it's just more of something for everybody to consider, especially property managers. And sometimes it's pretty straightforward, sometimes it's not, and you can really rely on kind of reaching out as a property manager if you're not going with the CM and you're just getting proposals, to kind of just talk to maybe your primary, your tried and true vendor, your first one you're going to go to, and say, hey, Tad, we're going to be doing this. What do you give me a ballpark of what you think is going to be? And before you waste their time, I'm not saying it's a waste, but before you get everybody going, and he says, well, it's going to be 50,000. He said, oh, wow, we thought it was going to be 25. Then you don't want to, then you get everybody's bids, and everybody's, anywhere between 45 and 55, and the board's like, we're going to wait another year. So what that happens is then everybody spent a lot of time to do it, which they don't mind doing, and that's part of the cost of doing business, but then you're postponing it, and then they have to refresh those all over again because a year goes by and their numbers are going to change. So something to consider. So that's why I wanted to backtrack with that. But then in regards when you're evaluating things, and to both Daniel's point and to everybody so far, including Tad, what he said is you got to look at what I look at when I'm bringing everything together besides what I just said. And I'm reviewing the proposals that are coming in on behalf of my client, who could be Aneta and HOAA, is if I'm seeing, there's scope of work and or RFP, and if I'm seeing variations that are pretty significant, really low or really high, I'm going back to both of those vendors and saying, here's the deal. Low vendor, you're 40% lower than the bid, and hey, upper, you're 40% higher. So let's look at these itemized things, and usually it pops out to me when I'm reviewing everything, because I have everything itemized, that it could be, maybe materials costs are really low. I'm like, you missed something. Maybe you missed the fact that you missed 3 windows that we talked about that had to be replaced, or whatever. You can kind of work with them to kind of pinpoint these items. Same thing with the, also it's a higher one. You're looking at this and going, you're looking at this, it's like you have a really big markup here, or there's something going on. You can kind of sort of help them evaluate. The other thing too, coupled with this, and if we can explore this further, and please ask me any questions or what have you. But also, if these folks, either one of those or both, are not going to budge from that, I then will reach out, or one of them is, I'll either do one of two things. If both of them, the low and the high, are not budging, I got to regroup and start this process a little bit differently. If one or the other is actually not budging, or there's such a big variance, I'm going to drop that one, whatever one's the outlier, because it's not going to be fair to the HOA, the client, or the people that are bidding, for anybody to be really fully evaluated. Because if they see like, wow, we're going to go solely on cost, something is going to happen there. And it's not going to necessarily be a good thing. Either they're going to try to push through change orders, or if they realize they can't do change orders and they have to eat these costs, then it's a lot of stress on whether it's just the property manager only that's handling this, or if it's the CM. So it's not fair for that to be compared. You usually don't see that too much. The top end, if they drop out, you can let them know, and and usually there's no harm, no foul on that one. It's usually the lower one that even though you might do one or the other, the lower one is the more significant one, often because of what I just said, that could really skew the project if it gets awarded that way. And not saying the middle one, or the road one, it doesn't need to be evaluated and could have some issues too as well. But that's how I look at everything, and that's my starting point to then look at these discrepancies as these come in. But to Tad's point, and to Daniel's said as well, if scopes of work are really developed well, and you're engaging the vendors as you're doing the walkthrough with them, whether it's joint or separate, and then they're evaluating everything, and they're coming back with RFIs about specific things, or if they're missing things, and say, hey, you should probably consider this, or you have to consider this, or when you miss this tie in detail or whatever. Those things are really valuable, because then it helps me to better improve on what's being bid on, and it gets value from it. And then of course, then ultimately, it's going to be less room for changes in cost and then everybody is bidding on everything, and it's a more encompassing scope, as well as during that evaluation process and award process, which will be facilitated by me, but also driven by property management, and then evaluated by the boards. They have a better way of just really evaluating. And then the other thing too, as well, is that if the differences between all of them are really nominal, it's really I always tell people, go with anyone. By the way, anybody that I bring to the table and the projects that I manage, I would want them to do the work. So I'm not bringing somebody in because I know they're going to be a low bid or a high bid or whatever like this. I want to bring them in because they're going to do the work, so the HOA can feel comfortable whoever they want to award with, and I do too as well. But when you have sort of the variances are not that great, and relatively speaking, like maybe they're off by a couple thousand each, then I say either one. But I always say middle of the road sometimes is just a good sort of standard thing to go with, the middle bid. If you get down to more variances, I still say consider the middle. But if it's solely driven and you say one's 5,000 less than the middle and the other high is 2,000, I mean, it's understandable they would probably go through the low one. And again, I stand by the fact that I bring everybody on that can handle it. But I want to help make sure that when it gets to that point where it's being evaluated and and looked at for approval, that everybody can do so. The vendors can be comfortable that they're being evaluated fairly, and property management and HOA boards also can have that, feel safe knowing that they have everything they need to evaluate and approve and move forward.
Yes.
Sorry, that was a long-winded. I apologize, but
no, fantastic, man. That's what I want to hear. And I think one of the key things that you touched on was communication, and making sure that and I harp on this one a lot, is making sure that there's open lines of communication between everybody across the board. It's really frustrating as a vendor when we spend all this time. I mean, I've done these bids where it's taken a few weeks to do everything, and all of my time, and I've had to put everything else to the side while I put these bids together. And I get the bid out and I propose, I send it out, and I'm like, okay, can we sit down and talk about this? I get no feedback. Or the proposal goes out, and we have a round table, we have the discussion, and then it just goes radio silence and nothing. There's no feedback. And it's horribly frustrating as a vendor, to put in all this work, all this time and labor and energy into something, and then it all disappears. Nothing else happens. Yeah. But it's also the same thing on the property management side. They want to have communication also, for the most part. It's been my experience that when you're asking those questions, intelligent questions towards the proposal, and towards putting it, making sure that we want to make sure that we are hitting all the points correctly for you, and getting that back and forth. I think that is incredibly important, and it's the best way to get a solid, comprehensive proposal to you, to your board, to the ownerships, whoever it's going to end up going to. So communication, please, everybody across the board. Yeah. Clear lines of communication are one of the most important things during these bidding processes.
Also, like even the feedback, like Mark was saying, it's for us. We always want to get better in every way, right? There is some dishonest companies out there, but there is some ones that are honest and they want to do things right. And so when the time when there is some discrepancy and it's a big discrepancy or something, we want to know to learn from that and say, oh, well, how to fix that in the future, and so it doesn't happen, rather than just saying, oh, you didn't get the job and that's it. Sometimes it's good to know a little bit more about the reasons and why, and so we can learn to fix those areas. I worked on my proposals a lot, just because I realized how important was the communication, and how sometimes it could be so vague that you're just not getting any jobs just because your proposal just seems there's not enough.
Incomplete. Yeah.
There's no information. So learning from that, say, you know what? Like honestly, the managers didn't like your proposal. It just, it might not even be mostly like price or anything. It's just the way that your proposal looked. And unfortunately, that it could come down to that. Just.
Absolutely, proposal presentation is incredibly important.
Right.
Absolutely. If it's not a clear proposal where there are explanations inside there and light items, and this is why we're doing this way. This is why this is defined like this. It can get lost. Why am I just getting this huge gigantic bid? The other thing, Daniel, is you had brought up a good experience the last time we talked about. With the monuments, and if it's not clearly defined in the proposal or in the RFP, what the covered area is, there's a possibility of high discrepancy. You brought up the monuments, and some bidders only did 2 or 3 monuments, whereas you bid every single monument on the site, and then there's this huge discrepancy. And if it's not brought back to you as a vendor of your price is incredibly high, what's going on here, you can't address that. You don't know, there's nothing to address unless it's brought back to you of what's going on here.
Yeah, I could have typed paint all monuments, and then the manager would see just a huge discrepancy in price and said, oh, well, these guys are crazy, they're too high. But I took the time to actually count them all and write down, there is 20 something monuments or whatever. And then that's how they realized that there was actually that many monuments, and the other bidders have only saw like 7 of them.
Yeah.
The huge difference in price. We actually, we got the job just because of that, right?
Yeah.
Just because,
a comprehensive proposal.
Right. And so.
Yeah, Ted. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, well, yeah, on that point, exactly. Like, I love being very detailed on my scope on the actual proposal, but also knowing that they don't always get read. Some sites type of follow up, or even just your email ahead of time, especially when it's not even an RFP, you're just throwing out a proposal to this, it's much more vague scope. I like to just highlight, hey, some people are probably not going to correct this slope, or some people are not going to include X. I'm including that. I even highlight a few little things that are, hey, I think all those gut things that me as the estimator walking around a building or a roof or a waterproof deck, I'm like, ooh, that needs ventilation over there. Those kind of things that not everybody's going to include. I like to just kind of make a note of that specific item that is, 90% of folks are going to miss this. Or like you as a painter, like most people aren't going to seal all that siding seams, they're just going to blow some paint on it and make it look good, so they're not going to paint the tops of the chimney caps, those kind of things like matter. And, and to your point with, painting, man, like very few painters care enough to actually make the thing waterproof and make it look good. That's my experience. So it's, just taking that time to explain, hey, this is the proper system, not just another proposal,
And go ahead, right.
Go ahead, Mark.
I was going to say, to Tad's point, and Daniel brought this up the last time, you want to make sure that the scope of work that they're saying they're doing is actually the scope of work that they're doing. And specifically when Daniel mentioned saying, well, they said they were getting 2 coats, when actually they weren't, because they're considering spray and back roll as 2 coats. And Daniel made a good point, because there are some folks out there, adding to what you said, Ted, about waterproofing, that they look at that as being that way, and that's not true. That's not 2 coats. And so it's really, and that goes to the point that both you and Daniel made, Tad, you and Daniel, that when you have your proposal, that whether or not they hopefully they do, but if they, if you go back to them and point this out, that you list what that 2 coats mean. You know what I mean? And that way, and you can go back, and if they're good about communicating and saying, well, they said 2 coats, but you're still 40% higher, you can say, well, make sure they're doing 2 coats. I mean, and explain that sometimes it's a bit of education too, if it's just if it's a property manager versus a construction manager or both, to make sure that they're not missing something as far as evaluation. because they might not know that, and you have better eyes on this, and and you're actually adding some things because you think it's important, and it most likely is, and it should be included. So
it's that goes back to the final bit of our conversation here, and that's comparing apples to apples and making sure when you're looking at these proposals, making sure that everybody has everything added inside there. I was in landscaping for 15 years, something like that. And I would often get the opportunity to compare bids, and, be inside that bidding process and compare bids. And there's a lot of times that people would leave things out, and there'd be little tiny things that no one would notice unless you are an expert in the field, right? The amount of irrigation, the amount of time spent fertilizing, but little tiny things. And when I would see these super low bids, I would say, well, let's compare these proposals. Why are these bids so different? Are these line items all the same? Is there a same amount of work, time, and material going into the project between the two bids or three bids? And again, it goes back to open lines of communication, and the vendors and the customer having an opportunity to sit down and discuss the proposals. I always recommend myself that there is a proposal presentation opportunity, that everybody can sit down and talk about their proposals and discuss why you propose it the way you did. We are the experts in our field. Our customers trust us to know what we're doing and to give them a good quality product or service. But again, it comes down to those open lines of communication. So I can never stress that enough.
Sorry, Brian. I think that's really good. I mean, partly, I don't know if you have a readily available that one document that we were discussing that we didn't get to last time, but it was that cross comparison spreadsheet that I shared with everybody. But if not, what I do, whether that can be put up on screen or not, because we did talk about it. But more important is, to your point, Brian, that sit down, but also coupled with that, I think it's important, whether it's construction management or property management, to help that evaluation process is to do a spreadsheet where you basically are summarizing and comparing. And how I do it is in columns. So I have, the vendors each have their own column at the top, scope of work on the left, itemized out succinctly, not large, like, building envelope, painting, maybe break it down further, windows, and maybe each window amount. And then you look at general conditions, and then also if there's any other costs, soft costs, such as architectural or structural, and CM down there. And then you can see by column. And so it helps me going across, because even though I've evaluated all these, I could then do a reference, and then maybe if I'm missing something, like, wow, I didn't notice this before, but they're like really, really high at this number. So it helps me to go back and help, make these a little bit more comparable and give the vendor or vendors opportunity to kind of reevaluate this. But also, as I'm giving this to property management and the boards, they can also then, not only they're going to read this, but they're going to go, wow, this is like a little Cliff Note type thing. They can look at and really get the idea. And I agree with you, Brian, and I think everybody agrees as well. Depending upon the size of the project, I think there is value of bringing the vendors in to talk. Absolutely. I think there's a big value that whether it's just a year that was an annual project or just a one stop, it's going to happen 1 year, or it's multi-year, because it helps the sale. Helps you guys feel connected, and then also it helps the boards really got to get a feel and of everybody that's going to be there, and then who they ultimately are going to select and have that relationship with. So there it is right there. So anyways, just, we don't have to go. I don't necessarily want to go through it, and you can't see all of it because it's a little truncated there. But as you can see, I have contractor 1, 2, 3. You see the bid form items down on the left. You can see, evaluated, breaking down. I'll give you an example. Look at the first one. That first line item, roof, one vendor, 1 and 3 came in fairly close to each other, and that contract 2, 17. So obviously they missed something.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And you look at the other one, the street elevation. Already you see the differences right there. So contract 2 basically miss something in a lot of these items. But and then also it's not exclusive to that too as well. So these are things that help me, but also help them ultimately. If they're going to stand by it, then of course, then you have it. Then you have the different soft costs, allowances, and such as well that are available. So that helps me, but it also helps the property manager and the board members.
And unit costs. So many contractors can be so cheap on the front end and then get you on the plywood on the end or something, And,
good point. Really quick. Sorry, go ahead, Tad.
It's up to us as the contractor as well. If we ever get the opportunity to speak to ownership or board members, you don't get the opportunity very well on a piece of paper or an email to explain that, hey, we're not the cheapest, but here's why I think you'll have excellent long-term value, and you're not going to be redoing this in 20 years, or 12 years, So that's a huge value to see to any face-to-face or even a Zoom call. It goes a long way.
Mark, you had something else?
No, that was just I was just going to do. I was going to say exactly what Tad said. So
yeah, and that also goes into building the relationships, building the trust. Again, we are supposed to be the trusted advisors. We are the experts in our field. So come to us, ask us. Don't ever feel afraid to ask us why we bid things the way we bid them. That's what we do. That's our job, and we're here to work with you. And if we need to sit down and talk with you, all of us are happy to sit down and talk to you and explain how we built the proposal, why we built it the way we did. And it's also a good opportunity to come back with, I think that there was X, Y, and Z missed in the RFP or in the proposal process. So, we are going to have to readdress that, and maybe we can take another look at it. But again, never, if you're coming to us, we're here to help you. That's our job. So, we're always, all of us here across the board are here to help you, and are always happy to talk to you about any questions you have. I think we're getting to the end here today. I mean, we can always continue these conversations for hours and hours and hours, but we're going to cut it off today. Our next meeting, what's our next in 2 weeks? Daisy, was that you?
That will be on April 9th. We're going to be having another discussion.
Perfect.
Awesome.
If anybody who's watching this today has any questions, feel free to reach out to us. If you have questions, or if you need help with the bidding process, if you need help with putting together RFPs, we've all done this numerous times. Mark is an expert in putting those together, and we'll be happy to help out with that. But again, we're all here to help you out, and happy to help out. So thank you so much for joining us. Ted, thank you so much for being a part of this today. Does anybody have anything you want to add to today's conversation before we leave?
No.
On our LinkedIn, it's on the bottom. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah. There we go.
Okay. Yeah. So it's on the bottom. It says find us on LinkedIn, Managing Through the New Norm. Go ahead and follow us on there. We are posting our next meetings, and we're taking polls as well as what topics you want us to discuss. So if you want to go ahead and follow us, we will appreciate it.
And you can find our past videos on that also. So it's easy to find our past videos.
Sure.
And to Brian's point about feedback or more info, that's another way you can reach us too as well. Whether you can ask the questions there, and one or all of us, or we'll reach out to you and answer and get back to you.
Always, we're always here to help you out. Perfect. Well, thanks everybody again for another good conversation. If anybody again is watching who has ideas for future topics that you would love to hear us talk about or be a part of, if you want to be a part of one of our conversations, please reach out to us. We would love to have more guest speakers. We're always looking for people who want to join us. So again, thank you everybody. Have a great weekend, and we will see you in 2 weeks.
Bye everybody.